movie fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Uncharted Media Podcast. This is episode 111. We took last week off, one, because there's not a lot of news, and two, just needed a holiday break. Not that the holidays are done now, but it's New Year's doesn't matter as much as Christmas. But we're back, loaded episode for you guys, and I'm looking forward to it. It should be a good one. But before we get into any of that, Michael, how you doing tonight? How was your Christmas?
Oh yes, Merry Christmas, Merry belated Christmas to all of our listeners out there. And as we approach a new year, Happy New Year. I am doing very well. It's been a glorious last week. You actually mentioned in the pre-production meeting there, hopefully this week was better, and it was. So I can't wait to get to these topics. There's been a lot of great news in the world of movies in this last week and a half. So very grateful for the time off, but I'm excited to kick off our start to the new year, but I don't think we can start the new year until we end there's many adjectives we can use to describe 2020, so I can't wait to get to our group discussion later.
Yeah, 2020, just kill it with fire. I remember when it was like February or March, and everyone was just like, yeah, we kind of missed 2019, because when 2019 was done, everyone was just like, oh, let's move on to 2020. Nope, we take that back. But we're moving on to 2021 soon, and I can't come soon enough. But believe it or not, there was still some good stuff that came out in 2020. So for our discussion this week, we're going to talk about the best movies of 2020. However, due to the circumstances, we added a little twist to it of if I or Michael saw the movie for the first time, it counts for us as a 2020 movie due to a lack of options. We still saw a lot of stuff because we had nothing better to do this year. So I'm looking forward to that. But before we get into all that, Michael, are you watching anything good? Are you reading anything good this week?
Yes, so one of the things that I added to my movie bank for 2020, I had to write them all down, but one of the things that I finished this week was Clear and Present Danger. I had started that film, and thanks to IMDb TV on Amazon Prime, I was able to finish that with some ads, which it's not bad. And that was a serviceable Jack Ryan film, so that was good. I enjoyed it. And then my father and I were finally able to, it was long teased, we were finally able to sit down and watch A Few Good Men, and that was thrilling. I love Aaron Sorkin anyway. I think he's one of the best writers
did Sorkin
in
write
Hollywood.
that? Did Sorkin write A Few Good
Yes,
Men?
yes, he
That
did.
doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, a fantastic film, fantastic cast, and I had a blast. So those are the two things that I wrapped up this week that I wanted to get done. I'll mention them briefly later, but they're very, very good films.
I've had a bunch of random stuff. Heather and I finished our binge of Cobra Kai ahead of this Friday's drop of Cobra Kai Season 3. It was cool. They bumped it up a week, so it's now coming out January 1st instead of January 8th. Good, because I don't want to wait any longer than I have to, so we finished our rewatch of that. Super excited. I have another one that I'll save that because it segues us into our news topic that we'll talk about later. I'm reading two different things because I can never just read one thing at a time, but also it's technically not because one of them is an audiobook and one of them a reading. Michael, you'll be happy to know I'm listening to the audiobook version of just Thrawn, the first canon Thrawn book by Timothy Zahn. I'm going through the Thrawn, not the Thrawn trilogy because that's not canon, but the what is canon in Disney. Because I know of Thrawn, but something tells me I'm going to need to be a little bit more familiar with him in the not too distant future.
Yep.
I'm listening to that, but I'm also reading some obscure comic. I don't think you've ever heard of it, Michael, called Captain America: Winter Soldier. It's pretty obscure. I don't know if you've ever heard of that one or not.
Very elusive, very rare item, yes.
So yeah, actually, Winter Soldier is my favorite MCU movie, but I've never actually read the entire story arc, so I'm looking forward to that. I got plenty of comics on my docket after the Christmas season, so I just started Winter Soldier, finished up Spider-Verse about a week or two ago. But yeah, the Captain America and Winter Soldier is very different than the one in the movie, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. He's he's more cold and militaristic, but he has more stuff going on in his story and before these events, as opposed to Chris Evans, who's still likable. Not saying this Captain America isn't likable. It's just it's just a bit of a stark difference. But also the big thing that I watched was Wonder Woman 1984 on Christmas Day. Well, it is certainly a movie. I won't say it's the best movie of 2020. I unfortunately can't even say it's the best DC movie of 2020. I've seen the word disappointing thrown out a lot with this movie, and I'm tempted to agree. Like when all the critics were talking about it when it was first coming out before the general audience could see it, everyone was singing its praises. It was like low 90s, upper 80s in terms of Rotten Tomatoes. As soon as it was released to general audiences, that plummeted, and I think it's now at 65% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I can see why. I really, really like 2/3 of the original Wonder Woman. I think the ending is kind of where things go off the rails a bit, and the movie gets confused as to what it wants to be. Confusing is the right word to describe Wonder Woman 1984. It is, on paper, a simple premise that they don't fully ever really explain and don't give you everything you need to know. Like, without dipping too much into spoilers, there's a thing that's letting people receive special gifts, but in exchange for something else. And it's hinted at in a quick passing line of dialogue that there might be some higher power responsible for this. That is never brought up ever again after that sentence. It's 2.5 hours. It does not need to be. This could have been a brisk 2 hours if things were stripped down. You got your two villains, Barbara Minerva, played by Kristen Wiig, and you got Pedro Pascal, the Mandalorian, playing Maxwell Lord. You should have just picked one villain. Either one of them would be fine, but both of them, I think, are really miscast. I like them both individually, but I don't know if they were the right fit for this movie. But together, they didn't feel like a comic book movie in 2020. It felt more like Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones in Batman Forever.
That's a bummer to hear, and
maybe not that bad.
I'm sorry to hear.
It's also, Michael, I'm sure you've seen in the trailers that like shopping mall scene where she like saves some people.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the worst scenes in the movie. Like, it's trying to be an homage to Christopher Reeves' Superman, which, you know, I'm all about the classic Superman. It was so bad. The bad guys, quote unquote bad guys, are like so cartoonishly over the top. I was like, what is happening here? I will say Gal Gadot, who I've been critical of in times in the past, she is significantly better this time around. I think she's getting more and more comfortable in the Wonder Woman role. I just don't think she was given a lot to work with. This movie tries to bite off so much, and it bites off way more than it can chew. It is 2.5 hours. It does not need to be. There's big concepts here that are never fully explained, and there's also a whole lot of assumptions of just like, well, that's not how that would work. And also, one little thing happens, this whole story crumbles. Like, I didn't mind it when I first saw it, but the more I've had time to marinate, I'm just like, yeah, this movie's really not that good. And also, without tipping too much into spoilers, I actually visibly got mad at one point in the movie where there's this big, huge revelation. It's supposed to be like this movie's version of the No Man's Land scene from the first movie. Except they use the exact, like, beat for beat, like, rip the audio track right out of the movie from the movie Sunshine. You know, that, like, famous music from Sunshine that doesn't really fit in the movie, but it's outstanding music. They steal it and blatantly put it in Wonder Woman for some reason. I'm like, guys, you have Hans Zimmer doing your score. And unfortunately, it's not one of Hans's better music. It's very phoned in. But this scene in particular, it's supposed to be, wow, inspiring, powerful. And I'm going, wait, why'd you steal the music for Sunshine for this? Why couldn't you just use your own music? It was so distracting, going, come on, guys. I wanted this to be so much better than it was.
Now, yeah, that's really disappointing. To even back up the fact that you said has dropped so much. I mean, as of right now, out of 319 critical reviews, it's at 64% with an
Oof.
audience score of 72. So that does not that does not bode well for that film as far as critics go. But if you look back to, I'm gonna look this up real quick, what it was in comparison to the first one back in 2017,
Probably
that
89.
was 93.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 93 versus 84, so considerably higher. Now, again, I think we've seen it all before. That, of course, that when you're a director with the prowess of Patty Jenkins, and you've just been given the green light to direct Star Wars Rogue Squadron, and you're on fire in Hollywood, you got all these great stories, and then this this news, where I mean, it's not like it's a terrible film from what I've read. It's
No,
just not. It's just
not awful.
disappointing is the word.
Yeah.
That Yeah, it's just disappointing, right? Considering what the pedigree of the people going into it, and the fact that you said that Gal is better this time around. That's all great stuff. And so, is every director allowed a mulligan? I mean, sure.
Yeah.
My question for you, Nate, is the first thing I thought of is, does this give you any pause? I mean, literally any pause about Rogue Squadron at all?
I was talking to a coworker today about this. Because we'll talk about this later. Wonder Woman 3 is still happening. That's one of our news topics that we'll talk about. I'm still optimistic about Patty Jenkins' future, but I still think she's a fantastic director. Maybe this was just a bad day at the office. I think she'll need a few more to be like, okay, I don't know if I trust you anymore. But I don't fully have the confidence that I did before this movie came out, if that makes sense. Like, I still trust you, but you're only as good as what you did last. And it's not just because it's Patty Jenkins. I would say Christopher Nolan was one of my favorite directors of all time, but I don't necessarily have that same level of faith in him that I did 10 years ago. Like coming off
Okay.
Inception, because to me, Inception was Nolan's last good movie. After a while, you start to kind of lose that faith. I have not lost complete faith in Patty Jenkins because of one movie. Like I said, this is not awful. It was just disappointing and it tried to bite off more than it could chew. I think Rogue One, I think she will have much better success with that, because I think it'll be an original story that she wants to do, and I feel like since it's starting something, it'll be much more of a stripped down approach as opposed to feeling the need to aggressively expand a universe. Like a first movie is a whole heck of a lot easier to do than a sequel. So I think she has an advantage in that respect. But also, she's still a good director. I don't know who's to blame for this, or multiple people to blame. I won't write her off. Like, I've seen a lot of other people just go, oh man, why is she doing Wonder Woman 3? She just ruined it with this. And to be fair, I did the exact same thing with John Watts coming back for Spider-Man 3. So, maybe I'm just close to the Spider-Man thing. But I've also said John Watts, maybe Far From Home was not his fault. We'll see with the new Spider-Man and with Fantastic Four. So, bring it back around. I don't really have any hesitation about her doing Rogue Squadron. I do have a little bit of hesitation with her doing the next Wonder Woman, but that's more of just you're continuing with this character. And also, without saying too much, this movie had no purpose whatsoever being set in the 80s. Whether it was set in 2020 or 1984 made no difference to the actual narrative of the story. And she's like, the third one will be set in present time. I'm like, is there a reason why it's present time now? Because this one probably should have been set in present time, because as much as I don't like Zack Snyder, a lot of what happens in 1984 directly contradicts Batman versus Superman. So I'm just going, okay. I still have faith in her, but my faith in Patty Jenkins is not as solid as it was before 1984, if that makes sense.
No, okay. I mean, that makes. I mean, it does. And I mean, you look at the writing credits here. I mean, you have Patty Jenkins, you have Jeff Johns, Dave Callahan as well, and you just like it would be a lot different. I would feel a little bit different if Patty Jenkins did not have her hands on the script. Jeff Johns seems to be somebody who's not really consistently admired for his work in the DC universe, for better for worse.
Well, okay, that's
So
the tricky thing. Is Jeff Johns seems to be a controversial figure when it comes to the movies, and I love Jeff Johns in the comic book realm. He's been attached
right,
to a lot of
yeah,
DC projects over the years, and I think that's more just because he's been the creative force for the comics. Like people are like, Jeff Johns is executive producer on Green Lantern. Um, yeah, and Kevin Feige was executive producer on Daredevil 2003 with Ben Affleck. You gonna hold that against him? Um, and there's been some backstage reports about like Jeff Johns butting heads with Zack Snyder, yada yada yada. I don't fully buy into any of those, but I think you're right. Jeff Johns is one of, if not the best modern comic book writer, but comic books and movies are two completely different mediums here. Like I love a ton of Jeff Johns stories, but if you told me Jeff Johns is no longer attached to any DC movie going forward, it's not going to be a big loss to me because he's a great comic book writer and a great visionary storyteller, but that doesn't necessarily translate to a good movie script.
yes, and that's the thing is it's completely different, uh, uh, completely different writing staff, screenplay and story by for the first Wonder Woman compared to the second,
Mm-hmm.
and Patty Jenkins did not have her hand at least credited in the writing credits at all in the first one, and so there were some comments I was seeing that like they really need to change up the particular the writing on it because from what I've heard, if a director doesn't have their hand in the screenplay, you can have the best director in the world, but you hand them a terrible screenplay, they can salvage it, but they can't make it an Oscar award winning screenplay in a film. It's just not going to
Mm-hmm.
happen. So I'm wondering if maybe it's not necessarily a director's role here necessarily. It's the fact that maybe the story just wasn't as fleshed out as it could have been. So I really wouldn't put that all on Patty, but seeing how she had a role to play in that, I'm really curious. But maybe if there is any solace here, if people, I'll say it's encouragement. If Patty Jenkins has proven herself as a fantastic director, and
Mm-hmm.
she's not a one-hit wonder. She's proven herself over her career, and people genuinely still like Wonder Woman, then I can tell you the good news is that Patty Jenkins is going to be incredibly busy over the next few years. So the idea that maybe she can take a step back from hopefully the story and the creative side, and do what she's passionate about, which I think is more signs for encouragement. If you are a fan of the Wonder Woman franchise, I still have yet to see it, so I've yet to get my try to like objective point of view on it. So I've kind of stayed away from reviews. So you telling me this tonight is a little discouraging, but I'll have to weigh in on my thoughts at a later time on the film.
It is by no means the worst movie of the year, but it was definitely disappointing because I had heard reports about the plot and this overall story, like some story leaks months and months back. And I was like, well, if these are true, this story kind of feels a little anticlimactic, and unfortunately, a lot of what had leaked out was true, unfortunately. But before we get into our main topics, I've got one personal one that I wanted to really talk about, just real quick, just because it's me. So, one of, if not my favorite comic book characters of all time is Nightwing. Better yet, just Dick Grayson. His whole story, I just love. From his time as Robin, he's still to me the best Robin of all time. To Nightwing, who is my favorite comic book character of all time. Well, in the comics, Nightwing has not had necessarily the best run of things. In October of 2018, the writing team on Nightwing, actually, I don't think it was on the Nightwing side, in a Batman issue, so not even in his own line of comics, Dick Grayson gets shot in the head by an assassin named the KG Beast and loses his memory. So promptly in the Nightwing run of comics, he becomes Rick Grayson. R-I-C Grayson. He's no longer calling himself Dick Grayson. He abandons the title of Nightwing altogether and just becomes a shell of what he used to be. He lets like a group of like 3 or 4 people become the Nightwings, and they all wear his like old suits and basically become a super Nightwing team while he just does nothing really. And we find out he's like mind controlled by the Court of Owls, and at one point like there's a magic stone or something that Joker controls. It just got awful to the point of, even though he's my favorite character, I, along with a lot of other Nightwing fans, just left the title because it strayed so far from the character we know and love. It would be like if Batman appeared in a Superman movie only to get hit in the back of the head by Lex Luthor, and now he's broke and as a bartender somewhere. Like, it's so far from what we know them to be. Well, thankfully, hallelujah, he is back. They're in March of next year, so the very next issue of Nightwing, because they're taking a little detour, Nightwing is getting a completely new creative team on the comic. And the creative team has already gone, yeah, we're going to more or less soft reboot this. Like, they said it in the nicest way to not throw shade on the previous comic book writers, but they're like, no, we're going back to Dick Grayson. We're big fans of him. We've seen him die twice in the comics in the past 10 years. That's not going to happen under our watch. We're going to take him back to being Nightwing, going back to the classic stories. They've even said off the bat that he's going to be teaming up with Batgirl, which is just a classic pairing. He's going to adopt a dog, so I'm like, all for that. As soon as I told Heather that, she's like, I'm down. I need Nightwing with a dog. Sounds like the cutest thing in the world. It sounds more like a return to the classic style of Nightwing, of just, why you stray so far from the recipe? Just back on target. Now, it's not a hard reset. It's not a reboot or anything. It's just, from this point on, it's going to go back to the normal. We're not ignoring what happened, but we're also not going to acknowledge it again anytime soon, which, pretty okay with me, because he's Dick Grayson, not Rick Grayson, and let's never have him not be Nightwing ever again, because for some reason, this poor character, he has been killed twice in a decade. He has had the mantle of Nightwing stripped from him twice in the past decade. Like, this character is just like, can we just put him back in some form of normalcy? For heaven forbid some of us actually just like Nightwing as he is and don't want radical changes. Like, DC Comics the past like year or so has been like, we need to drastically reinvigorate all of our characters. I'm just like, maybe some of us just like the characters how they are. So just a quick little aside for me, but I rejoice in the streets going, oh, I can finally read Nightwing comics again and just back to form, because, yeah, I want Nightwing, and I'm still mad that Chris McKay never did that Nightwing movie because he left it for the Dungeons and Dragons movie. But, yeah, I'm like, oh, I can finally read Nightwing comics again, because, Michael, as someone that doesn't read comics, I don't think you'll ever fully understand how stupid this Rick Grayson thing was. And it wasn't just like a quick little aside. It only just recently wrapped up. This whole Rick Grayson story arc thing has been going on for 2 years.
Oh my. Yeah, that knowing how much, and trust me, for those who are listening, I don't have a dog in this fight, except for anything that I have that's vicariously lived out through Nathan and his passion. But considering we were roommates for a year at college, I know how passionate you are. I know how much you loved playing as that character.
I literally have my Nightwing piggy bank by my desk. I have all 1, 2, 3, 4 Dick Grayson pops with a 5th on the way. I do not have a problem. Yeah. Go on, Michael.
No, well, yeah, at least the fact that you're self-aware is helpful in your rehabilitation. I know how you liked playing as him in like the Arkham games, as well as what was that combat game that you played, the superhero combat?
Oh, Injustice.
I think it was for
Injustice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
And it's the only reason why I'm playing Gotham
so
Knights.
I know how much. I mean, I know how much this character means to you, and just hearing you describe what had happened, I mean, that's got to be a. I mean, I know it's a narrative choice, but that's kind of, I would say, at least for me, if I'm going to put myself in your shoes, that would be kind of like a sucker punch.
To
And so I'm
to
really
explain.
glad. I'm really happy. It's just the fact that if 2020's taught me something is like, hey, don't worry, it could always be worse. So
Mhm.
not to throw that shade out there, but they could really mess it up. Uh,
Yeah, for you, Michael, it would be like in The West Wing if there's an assassination attempt on Martin Sheen's character and he just goes, "You know what? I'm good with selling Subway from here on out. Aaron Sorkin yourself, why don't you become president for this show? And then I'll just make sandwiches at your local Subway." You're just going, "That's not what I signed up for."
Okay, that's it. That would be a horrible analogy, but I understand the emotional trauma and the investment in that. So, well, thank you for at least making that more relevant, because that would be awful. So, well,
Mhm.
I'm glad. Do you know anything about this new story group? Do they have any credibility, any history behind them?
It's funny that you bring up Injustice because there's actually a ongoing comic series based on that world. And the writers of Injustice are the ones writing this new Nightwing story. They are huge fans. This artwork is the artwork for the series, which I'm much more okay with. I didn't mind the current artwork. It was whatever. It's a tinge darker. It looks more like the classic blue. Like, I'm down with it. I do trust this writing team a whole heck of a lot more because Nightwing, for the past 2 years, while this whole stupid Rick Grayson thing's been going on, it has been a revolving door of writers because everyone's going, "Yeah, we want to do something, but the higher ups aren't letting us do this, so we'll do something a little less stressful." Like, it's been a revolving door of people just going, "Yeah, this is not the position we really want to be in or want the character to be in." So it seems like these guys are going to have more creative freedom to just kind of not go back to the drawing board, but go back to what works, because this guy, it's like how Sony handles Spider-Man, except a little bit worse. Just, come on, guys, just be nice for once. He's been through the ringer. Other than Wally West, I don't think there's a DC character that's been crapped on more than Dick Grayson, unfortunately.
Well, oh, here's to change in 2021.
2021, one good thing is guaranteed. One guaranteed thing that's coming is a new Wonder Woman movie, as we teased earlier, coming off the back of the supposed success of Wonder Woman 1984. I say supposed just because we haven't fully seen the stats on HBO Max yet to see what the subscriber numbers were, this, that, or the other thing, box office, like, to truly gauge how the box office did with this movie. But this is not surprising. That we're getting another Wonder Woman with Patty Jenkins out and Gal Gadot reportedly reprising their positions. I said before, I still have faith in Patty Jenkins here. I think maybe she just had a bad day at the office. Maybe, as you said, she just had a bad script to work with. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm optimistic. But please, 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 can we just set this one in present day? Like, it bothered me a whole lot in both Wonder Woman movies. They're just like, they rely so heavily on the Steve Trevor thing. And it's, again, present in 1984, but I'm still going, the only reason you brought him back in 1984 is because you wrote yourselves into a corner by saying Steve Trevor existed in the World War I era, as opposed to, just making the movie in the modern day. That way, they can live happily ever after as a couple together, because Steve's supposed to exist in the same modern day that we do, but whatever. Yeah, I don't think this is a bad idea. This makes sense. What's interesting to me is Warner Brothers, when they made this announcement, was like, we're fast tracking this project. And I'm going, you can say that, but Patty Jenkins is busy with something else. You're not moving fast on just about anything, unless Patty Jenkins has said that she and Jeff Johns had an idea for a third movie and a Themyscira spin-off show. So maybe they already have the story done. But again, you're going to be waiting till she's done with Rogue Squadron before you do anything with Wonder Woman. So how fast can you fast track this?
Yeah, that's a very legitimate question. That was the probably the biggest um, you know thing that I latched onto in this announcement was the fast tracking because like what exactly does that mean considering knowing her schedule and the fact that nothing is still guaranteed production wise. It's not like everything that we've been dealing with 2020 is just magically going to disappear here once the clocks roll over into 2021. So logistical issues and like those will still be there. So fast tracking, I'm really curious to see what they mean by that as well. I'm just unsure of the timeline, but in this case, we've seen it in the video game industry. Cough, cough, Cyberpunk's launch, and the fact that some people still want to fast track. Some people still want to fast track productions on stuff. So I'm hoping that they just take their time. As impatient as we can be as fans and as consumers, if we're honest, we would rather have a better product. And so, considering what our other stories are going to be, we're going to touch on here soon, I would rather them pump the brakes, evaluate things and the feedback that they got in this film, and go from there. I don't want them fast tracking it. In fact, that's the exact opposite of what I want coming out of Warner Brothers at the moment. So that's I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Unfortunately, it's all speculation. But as far as the Wonder Woman 3, I mean, it makes sense. It's going to be profitable. It was going to be profitable anyway. So the studio ordering another film, it makes sense because it's ultimately it's going to make money. So sure.
This doesn't surprise me at all that they're fast tracking another one. I think it's mainly because Wonder Woman, the first one did extremely well, and you're right. I think no matter what the critical reception is for this one in any other year would have done well. Which, quick aside note, I was listening to the Avengers Endgame soundtrack a few days ago with Heather in the car, and I was just like, can you imagine if Endgame came out just 1 year later? Like, how drastically different the landscape would have been? Like, that would not be the number one movie of all time. It probably would have been delayed, and people would have gone insane knowing that they would have to wait forever to see Endgame. But I think the reason why they fast-track Wonder Woman 3 is Wonder Woman right now is their bread and butter. It is their top franchise for DC because they're dragging their feet with Superman. They don't know what they're doing. Batman, they're banking heavily on the Matt Reeves Batman, and I think it's going to be awesome. But there's still some general confusion among casual movie fans of Ben Affleck versus Robert Pattinson, which one is the Batman. Then there's talk of Michael Keaton coming back for The Flash. The Flash movie is nowhere to be seen. Aquaman did well, but there's only one of them. Wonder Woman, there's been two, at least on paper, seemingly successful movies. So right now, Wonder Woman is probably DC's top priority, and rightly so. That, to me, is why they probably are going with the third one. It just makes logical sense. It's their safe bet right now, with DC not necessarily having the most safe bets. There's a lot of exciting things on the horizon, I think, and we'll talk about that for our next story. They have a couple good, if we're talking sports here, they got a couple really promising prospects, but right now Wonder Woman is your perennial all-star. Shazam, the first Shazam was great. I still think that's a up-and-coming act, because the first one did okay, but it doesn't have a sequel yet, and we're kind of just biding our time till we get that Shazam Black Adam square off. Aquaman, huge success. There's only been one movie so far, and with the whole Amber Heard situation, it's a little iffy. Wonder Woman is their steady hand right now until they figure out what they're doing with the Batman, what they figure out what they're doing with Superman, if anything. So this just makes the most sense to me why Wonder Woman 3 got announced. So, is there anything in particular that you would like to see for a Wonder Woman 3, Michael?
Well, it's a difficult question. It is a valid one, but I really don't know how to answer it because I haven't seen 1984 yet. But if there's something that I'd be interested in the character, what I want from Wonder Woman is her to truly come into her own as a character and not have to deal with anything in the past, but something going forward. Like, be bigger than trying to make it or trying to prove yourself, or also get over your past. Finally, be yourself. Be comfortable in the world in which you're in. Own your role as a superhero. And for me, as an audience member, the one thing that I would like to see from Wonder Woman is her, have not just it goes beyond self confidence, but it's the idea that you're not you're not something else. You are your own person. You are just as worthy as any other superhero.
You are who
Hero
you choose
is
to
out
be.
there. And as far as a conflict that I'd be interested in seeing her and like in a resolve is somebody who is adamantly opposed to superheroes, is maybe out for blood because they believe that once Superman started this domino effect, all the rest of these superheroes have come out of hiding, and they are not doing good things for us. And so I want her to be presented with a not just a doomsday scenario of, oh, okay, hey, look at the whole world's threatened, but like a more personal, like moral, like
So like
storyline. And
so like Winter Soldier, basically.
yes, I'd rather see something like that, particularly with Wonder Woman, because it gives an opportunity to go a little bit more in depth with the character, and it would ask more of Gal and her acting prowess to kind of give us a more emotional performance, like you do see in Chris Evans. Like the Chris Evans that you see in Winter Soldier is very different than in the rest of the films, and I absolutely love that about that particular film. Like Cap's character development and just overall psyche is challenged more so in that film, and it's not the biggest doomsday plot, even though the villains are trying to do certainly has a wide reach, and could have catastrophic damages, but it's something a little more personal and close to home, and that is what I'm more interested in, because how many times can you do the whole world is being threatened and a big bad guy who's really big and bad because he's bad and big?
Skybeam, a
Yeah,
gray villain.
yeah, and so I'm getting really tired of that, and that's where I hope that they go.
I've seen this idea floated around, and I think it'd be at least a fun idea to at least throw around the board and as a creative idea. In the modern day, Wonder Woman teaming up with Superman, but big caveat: do not, and I repeat, do not make them romantic interests for each other. There's one of the biggest power couples that I hated in all of comic book history was when Superman and Wonder Woman hooked up. It doesn't work. Superman needs to be with Lois Lane. I think that could be a lot of fun. And maybe, it's not maybe, it 100% is just me going, please, sir, can I have anything Henry Cavill related at all? You could have him just wear the Superman thing and just stand there in front of a screen for 2 hours and just wave at me like a moron, and I'd just go, thank you, I'll take it. It's better than nothing. So I think a Wonder Woman Superman team up could be a lot of fun. Two people with godlike powers, maybe fighting Brainiac, but again, I'm still kind of hoping for Brainiac in a Superman 2 or Man of Steel 2 type of situation. So that's kind of what I would hope, but that might be a possibility because anything is a possibility with DC right now, because it seems like, in the words of the Joker, DC is going to be going through an aggressive expansion. Because I think DC got real nervous looking at that Disney investor call and went, oh crap, here, everything. Actually, it's not as dramatic as people are making it out to be. So what we're talking about is Walter Hamada, who is in charge of Warner Brothers, basically came out and said that they're hoping to have 4 DC movies in 2022 and 4 years, 4 theatrical release movies every year from then on out, and really explode the market with DC projects, both theatrically and HBO Max. Now, some people will be like, well, I thought all the stuff was going to HBO Max and they don't care about the theatrical experience. That's an AT&T decision, not a Warner Brothers decision. I don't think Warner Brothers knew that they were being voluntold to go to HBO Max. And some people are going, 4 DC movies in 2022? Are you nuts? That's way too many. To which I'm just going, guys, you do know there's already 3 on the calendar for 2022 already. And depending on when that animated Super Pets movie's coming out, we may already know what our 4 movies are. So it's not a huge change to the schedule. And they've also said they have 2 movies that they would like that same year to go straight to HBO Max. And it sounds a lot like it's going to be the Static Shock movie and the long gestating Batgirl movie, which I still don't actually believe is ever happening and never has been happening. I think it's just a cover for when they brought Joss Whedon in for the Zack Snyder reshoots. So they're just like, oh, no, we're bringing in Joss for who's the female character we have? Oh, Batgirl? He's working on a Batgirl movie. And then once he was done with the Snyder Cut reshoots, they were just like, sorry, I couldn't figure out Batgirl, even though we never were working on a Batgirl. That's just how I see it. Maybe they are actually working on a Batgirl movie. But Michael, you hear that they're doing a bunch of DC projects. Do you think this is Warner Brothers jumping the gun, and doing what they did before Batman v Superman came out and just announcing a whole bunch of stuff? Or do you think this is a smart play in the world of streaming?
I am conflicted on this, very much so, because when I first heard this, my reaction immediately was, I don't care. And when I look at that, and my reaction, if I'm being objective, I would say I don't care because I'm not a big fan of the DCEU films. I personally haven't liked hardly any of them. And
if you had to, what are the ones that you do like? What are the ones that you do like? If you had to
say? So I'll get to that in a second because actually, okay. I basically say so that's my reaction, and then I'm gonna go and basically disprove my own reaction, or basically kind of settle myself down a little bit. Okay, so this seems highly reactionary to Disney. It's just that Disney happened to have the press conference first. And the fact that Disney has the press conference first, they have the public's trust, anything that comes after is going to be a loss. Because even if any company announces something great, it's going to be to the average consumer like, oh, they're just doing that because Marvel's doing that. Which, that might be true to a certain extent. But, Hamada doesn't get to a place of this type of authority and decision making if he's just being reactionary to other people. And if you don't think that other people are reactionary and let other people go first, I mean, Disney has tested the waters, and just like Apple, they have allowed other people to pave the way, make mistakes, and then they can come in and perfect it. So this happens in the industry all the time. So when I hear that a lot of these films are going to be coming, well, we knew that there was going to be some. I mean, at the moment, we already know that the Suicide Squad's coming, The Flash, Aquaman 2, Shazam, and Black Adam. And there's these other films that are excluded from that list that are also coming. Mm-hmm. So we do know that there is already announced films. It's not like that's going to surprise us. But what it is surprising, it does seem like they're just going from 0 to 100 without any transition. Mm-hmm. That gives me a little bit of a pause. But when I look and I have to critique myself, I say, what films are good? Well, there have been 9 DCEU films with the current release now of Wonder Woman 1984. And let me just run through them real quick just for the viewers. And let me compare them to the first 9 releases of the MCU films. So, going back to 2013 and going all the way to present, we have Man of Steel, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, Justice League, Aquaman, Shazam, Birds of Prey, and we know Wonder Woman 1984. Now, you compare that to the first 9 films of the MCU, you have Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America: The First Avenger, Marvel's The Avengers, Iron Man 3, and Thor: The Dark World. And then and then finally Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Those are the first 9 films. Now, I am not going to say that any of the Marvel films were absolutely just flat out bad, because I think the curve for the DCEU is
Thor:
worse.
The Dark World.
However,
Thor: The Dark World. Thor: The
Yeah,
Dark World.
yeah.
Thor: The
Like
Dark. Incredible Hulk. Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
Iron Man 2, man.
There are films that split the people, like the films of the nine. Okay, that I would say people universally love them. I would say like, well, Captain America, Winter Soldier, Avengers,
Iron
Iron
Man.
Man. Those,
Yeah.
yeah, those are definitive.
Yeah.
Now, if you go and you look at DCEU, people generally like Man of Steel, Wonder Woman, Aquaman,
I wouldn't say Man of
Shazam.
Steel. I wouldn't say Man of Steel. I love Man of Steel, but I wouldn't
Well,
say. I would say Shazam.
Well, 3.5.
I would say Shazam, Wonder Woman, and maybe Aquaman. Critics didn't, but screw the critics. Aquaman's the best DCEU movie. Fight me.
Right. Well, I mean, it made over $1 billion. Like,
Yeah.
It had
Momoa.
legs. Like, so, like, yeah, and I am referring to the fans. And so when we look back on these, they pound for pound, like, does the worst of Marvel compare to the worst of DC? I think the worst that Marvel has to offer is better, but it's not like Marvel absolutely was killing it out of the gate. It's really in phase 2 that they found that rhythm, they found that theme that they were looking for, which we know the DCEU has been just all over the place with trying to figure out what the audience wants. And I know the DC fans were like, we want a more kind of grounded, a little more cynical film. It's not as much
Maybe
fanciful.
some of them do.
It kind of lays off. Well,
I want my hope and
like
optimism,
that
dang it.
Seems like, I mean, I do, right? But I mean, even like, I don't want to really see like Superman have the same theme of like Guardians, right? I mean,
Yeah.
It's they know their place. They figured it out. And in DC, I just don't know if we've been as forgiving because they've come later. I mean, Iron Man came out in 2008, so they had 5 years before DC. I mean, they were in this market 5 years before DC released, Man of Steel. I mean, they were on Iron Man 3 the same year that Man of Steel came out.
I think the big difference
they were
is
already in the marketplace. They were getting feedback. They were trying to tell this much grander narrative that they had already in place, and they were able to adjust. DC has been all over the place.
I think the reason for that is one, people always assume that DC is trying to catch up, and to a certain extent DC is. But Marvel has painstakingly made everything interconnected. DC is making it abundantly clear, and I think it's their big game plan going forward, and I think it might actually be their saving grace going forward, that we don't care about interconnected stuff. We care about properties. Like, they're going to have a whole bunch of these movies, but notice the ones that are the best received ones are the ones that don't necessarily tie into other movies or set up other things. Wonder Woman does not set up a future movie at all. Aquaman doesn't set up a future movie at all. Shazam hints to a sequel, but it's very much a self-contained movie. I love Man of Steel. It's my favorite Zack Snyder movie, except for maybe Watchmen. But that is not, despite what Zack Snyder may tell you, Man of Steel was not meant to set up anything. It is a standalone movie, and I think people expect DC to follow the Marvel trend of everything has to be connected. Everything has to be leading to an Avengers level threat for DC. And I don't think that's their game plan now. I think they're counting on Flash to introduce the multiverse and be like, this can happen on this world, this can happen on this world, this can happen on this world, and just make as many movies as they want under the DC banner, but don't necessarily have to make them connected, which I don't think is a bad thing. Just make good movies and people will show up. Guys,
yes.
Things don't have to be a connected universe for it to work. You know how I know? Because that's how comic book movies were made before 2008. It's possible. We want stuff to be in a connected universe. Sure, it's cool, but it doesn't have to be. Just make good movies. And I think, maybe it's just me being an optimist here, but the more movies you crank out here for theatrical and HBO Max, the higher the odds that some of them might actually be good. Now, I'm saying this as someone who's been desperately asking for a Man of Steel 2 and a Nightwing movie, and I fully acknowledge that me taking this stance is just me going, okay, if they're making a whole bunch more movies, then that means that might actually have a time to shine. We might finally get this Nightwing movie. We might finally get this Superman movie. And it's completely selfish of me, but I don't care, because one of my biggest frustrations right now as a DC fan is Marvel has this huge library of people that they've put in movies. From Howard the Duck was in Endgame, for crying out loud, to now we're getting Kate Bishop, Miss Marvel, a whole bunch of, no offense to them, but lower tier characters. Whereas DC, still no Teen Titans, no Nightwing, no standalone Flash movie, the Green Lantern Corps in modern day, Martian Manhunter, Red Tornado, the Hawks. Like, there's so many cool characters in the world of DC, but we keep sticking to the same ones. And so maybe, at least for me, I'd like the idea of they're announcing a whole bunch of new stuff, because maybe for once we can just gravitate towards new creative ideas, because DC is all about that when they want to be. That's just me being optimistic, because gosh dang it, Man of Steel 2, get here already.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. My goodness, what I'd give to see a Teen Titans film. I love that. Oh my gosh, I love that. That animated series. That was so good.
Okay,
Um,
I've told Heather
yeah,
this before. I almost cried tears of joy when Cap lifted Mjolnir and they did the Avengers Assemble. If you did this right, there's a famous arc called the Judas Contract. It's where Robin finally becomes Nightwing. If you have Robin in a movie, in a Teen Titans movie, become Nightwing, and they have an Avengers type moment where camera zooms in on Robin, Titans, go. I would die happy tears in my eyes. I could retire a happy man from everything movie related, and I feel like it's not far away. I feel like the best days of DC are not far away. It's just frustrating to wait at times, because I feel like we are so close to a Superman movie. I just feel it. But I get tired of waiting, if that makes sense, for something that I don't know if it's coming, but I just feel like I feel like big things are on the horizon, but that could just be me.
No, the best days I think at DC are certainly and hopefully in front of them. I'm just still personally struggling to care, because they have not captivated my my attention yet, and they're going to have to earn it. So I'm going to remain skeptical, but also hopeful.
Well, one thing that we know for a fact that is coming from DC in 2021, no matter what happens production-wise, is the Zack Snyder version of Justice League, or Justice League as it was always intended to be. Sure. Keep telling yourself that, Zach. Well, it finally has a release date in 2021 of sometime in March. I have been very vocal that I'm not overly excited for this. I'm not a fan of the direction that Zack Snyder took his movies. I forget who it was. I think it might have been Nando V Movies. He had the spot-on analysis of Zack Snyder of he wants to do a movie with Batman and Superman-like characters, but not a movie with Batman and Superman. Like, the reason his Watchmen movie works is because those characters are like mainstream comic book characters, but they're allowed to be sad and depressing. Zack Snyder wants to have a Superman-like character, but not a Superman movie, if that makes sense. I have not been a fan of the direction that he's taken the DCEU, and I feel like once we get past the Snyder thing, we can finally move forward in a more optimistic direction. Now, some things have come to light that make me more on board with the Snyder Cut. Walter Hamada, in his discussion about aggressive expansion, has said that the Snyder Cut more or less will be a one-off. They say that it's a cul-de-sac of storytelling. Basically, it will end where it started. This will be more or less the end of the Zack Snyder stuff. And he also said that this Snyder Cut will be non-canon to the DCEU, which I'm much more on board with that. Like, if you told me all the Zack Snyder movies are Elseworld stories, I'd be much more okay with that than anything else. it's a example. It's a prime example of Snyder fans are gonna hate me for this, but it makes me go along the lines of Batman and Robin. The reason why people hate Batman and Robin is there's many reasons, but at the time Batman and Robin came out, there weren't a lot of comic book movies. So what you saw was basically what you were going to get for a few years. And in regards to DC, when Zack Snyder was first starting everything, that was it for DC. Now, if we get in the middle of this big DC explosion that might be on the horizon, where we get new Superman movies, new Batman movies, Aquaman, Shazam movies, maybe even a Nightwing movie. I refuse to give up on that. And then Zack Snyder comes back. I think I'd be more okay with that because he would just be another voice throwing out his creative vision out there. When he first started his DCEU, it was his way or the highway. If you wanted to see any of your favorite DC characters, this was the only way to see them in live action. Whereas that's not the case anymore. Plus, Snyder fans are just bullies, and I'm really just waiting for this to be done with so they can hopefully move on to other projects. I think people always debate about Last Jedi. I think the Snyder Cut's just as bad in terms of fan division. You either love Snyder with everything or you hate him with everything. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think if given the right material, he's great. But that material is not a lot of the DC characters. So I'm still tentatively curious about what is different about his version. I believe the reshoots that we got, knowing what Walter Amada is saying, is more or less we're just doing this to tie up loose ends with Zack. I bet his reshoots are more or less to kind of give closure because he had this whole 5-movie arc or whatever. I bet you that some of the reshoots were kind of to nip some of the edges a little bit and kind of clean up his version that doesn't tease future things. But Snyder does, as much as I'm not a big fan of him as a filmmaker, Zack Snyder's one heck of a self-promoter when he wants to be. He can get fans all riled up. So you see that the Snyder Cut finally has a release date. I don't think you and I have actually talked about it, Michael, but what are your thoughts on the Zack Snyder version of Justice League?
Yeah, but I'll answer the same way as I did earlier. I'm rather conflicted because I did not like um, Justice League at all, and it was a tragedy what happened in the production of that in the personal life of Zack Snyder. So I have no animosity towards him. I have a lot of empathy in regards to what happened, and they were able to finish a movie under non-ideal circumstances and put it out, and I went and saw it, and I was like, well, that was a movie very similar to what you described in Wonder Woman 1984 as. And so I have no desire to see it again. Now, given this news and all the rumors that going up to it, as somebody who did not see the director's cut of Dawn of Justice for the same reasons why I don't really care about this, they've also given me less reason to care because it's not going to be part of the DCEU's canon. So even if I do like it, I guess from a character standpoint, I really don't have any hope there. So I
It's okay.
will
Neither the characters in the
watch
movie.
it because that's really funny. I will reluctantly watch it like I will, I guess, from Wonder Woman 1984. They just haven't sold me, and I guess I'm so reluctant because it's like, why would I spend my time doing that when I can be doing other things with my time and consuming other forms of content? Because this seems more like a chore. I have to actually think about it, and as a movie fan myself, I'd rather not have to think about watching a movie. I'd rather be like, yeah, that's awesome. That's coming in. I can't wait for it. And I honestly just don't have that reaction here.
Yeah, I think Snyder is. If Snyder was a cinematographer and a cinematographer alone, he would be one of the best cinematographers in the business today. But it's when you have to construct a story with words and plot and everything else around those images that he gets into issues. My rule of thumb with Zack Snyder has always been, if you need drab and depressing and a pessimistic worldview, then Zack Snyder's your guy. If you need hope and inspiration, it's not him, because he wants characters to be cool and tough. But in his idea of what cool and tough is, which is different than what I've seen in previous comic iterations. And again, if you love Snyder, that's awesome. I think if he did this a few years from now, if DC's wildly successful, I think that's different because it's just a director adding a different flavor to a buffet, basically, as opposed to you are only having this for dinner. This is the only thing you want. Well, I kind of wanted something else, but no, you will eat this and you will like it, as opposed to having multiple options. I think that makes the palette a little better here. Zack Snyder is good at very specific things, but I would still like the choice to be able to watch something else. And for a while there, he was the only real choice for DC. And they're my favorite comic book characters, and there was this disconnect there. So, I think they're doing this so that Warner Brothers can maintain some sort of a healthy relationship with him, but he very well might jump ship to Netflix if they don't want to continue to expand his thing. Now, he's talked about, after the Snyder Cut, expanding his world with Jim Lee in a comic book world. That could be interesting. I think that would be intriguing to me more so than continuing it on in the world of movies, because then it is an Elseworld story, and then it is continuing his story, but in the medium of comics. That I don't know why that's different to me, but that sounds more intriguing to me. But it seems like Warner Brothers is gonna have some bigger issues to deal with than Zack Snyder, though. Michael, you remember about a week or two ago when AT&T and HBO Max decided to just piss everybody off in the movie theater bubble? Well, you guys got your ticket for the pay-per-view event? Because it's about to get ugly, because theaters, they've decided to respond to HBO Max and AT&T, as it seems like some theaters are threatening to cut their ticket prices for Warner Brothers movies. So you know how you might pay $10 or $12 to see Avengers or Star Wars? How would you like to pay $3 or $5 to see The Batman or The Suicide Squad? And in the words of the great Ken Watanabe and Godzilla, let them fight. This is going to get ugly real fast, and I want to see how bad it's gonna get, because HBO Max, you done goofed, but this is gonna be really, really fun for all of us involved, unless you destroy the movie theaters, in which case you make me very sad. But I would just love it if you're at the movie theaters and someone's just like, one ticket for Avengers, please. Okay, that'll be $12. One ticket for Justice League 2, please. Okay, that'll be $5. That would be ridiculous. This just screams pettiness, and I love every minute of it. This is so stupid. Like, can we just make a movie about the fight between HBO Max and theaters? Because at first, it seemed like HBO Max might be killing the theater experience. After the launch of Wonder Woman, oh yeah, they're gonna need the theaters back open, and after the whole Dune and Godzilla vs. Kong controversies that Warner Brothers and Legendary are going through right now, HBO Max is just like the awkward child just going, I didn't do anything, but mommy and daddy are yelling at each other. So this is a very interesting fight to see. Michael, do you see this actually happening at any point? And what do you see the fallout of this continuing to be between HBO Max and the theaters?
Well, I actually really love the move, because it's the movie theaters that are being thrown under the bus this entire year. So with HBO and AT&T coming out with this, I've been, as a movie theater fan, I've been thrilled to see the response against, even in the movie theater in the industry themselves, against this move. And for the movie theaters to do this, I think it's the best play they have on the board. I mean, if this is a game of chess, they're going right for the queen. Where it's going to hurt them the most, and that's going to be the money. You say, fine, you wanna play it both ways. Well, we make most of our money off of our concessions anyway, and if we can offer people to come in and have a nice time out, and we can do it at the fraction of the cost, and people will do it, then absolutely we're going to do it, because guess what? You guys have cut our knees out from underneath us. You forced our hand. And actually, considering where the market is going, and people want to, you can call me a capitalist, but The reason why I like a free market is it gives power to the consumer, and the market will dictate, what the market can bear. And if you give the power to the consumer, it, it's actually it's actually, I think, going to be a good thing. But it's surprising that it hasn't gotten this far, because yeah, even though certain theaters have matinee showings and cheaper prices, the fact that all movie tickets for the most part are born equal is ridiculous in a way. I mean, understand that there's so much more stuff that I don't understand, but if we already pay a premium for like IMAX and for certain formats, but it's almost inevitable to where, you know what, we have this IP, we have this market share. Do you think, if every movie theater were to raise their ticket prices $1, just $1 for every Marvel film that were to come out, that's not going to dissuade people. That's not going to dissuade people. And if for every dollar they raise for a Marvel film, for that independent film that's not going to sell a lot, they decrease the ticket price by $1 because it's just some random independent film. It's a horror movie that they made for 20 cents. The idea that like this average over time would equal out anyway, I'm just surprised it's taken this long. Do I see this happening in this particular case? No. I think this fight between the HBO Max and AT&T with the rest of the movie industry, I think this was a let's swing for the fences and see what happens. Let's go big and see if the market is ready to sustain this type of systemic and basically landslide of a shift, because that's what this would be. And clearly they are not, considering what they announced with what Warner Brothers announced, with the fact that we're still going to make films for theaters, and then also we're going to do this for HBO Max and as well, just like Disney is. So you're seeing a hybrid. You're seeing, like you had mentioned, Nathan, that there are certain genres of storytelling that maybe belong on the smaller screen. They don't need to be a big blockbuster. So I think this is all good news. I don't know where it's headed, but as far as ticket prices, I just want to let you know, if I'm going to be guaranteed a good film, I have no problem paying more of a premium ticket price. And I'm not talking about format change. I'm not talking about 3D. I'm not talking about IMAX. I'm just talking about, I go to my local theater, and it's like, oh, hey, it's a Marvel film, and it's $1 more than what I'm used to paying beyond inflation. Honestly, because I know I'm going to get a nice return on my investment, I have no problem with that. If at the same time they don't do that with films that no one's going to see, like that don't hardly earn a profit. Like, so I don't know. I would be okay with that.
On the flip side, I see movies that, not to be that guy, but I've seen movies in theaters that not a lot of people go out and see. Like I saw last year,
Sure.
Shia LaBeouf's Honey Boy. I love that movie. If those movies have a theoretical chance to do better at the box office by slightly reducing their ticket prices by $1 or $2, and maybe incentivizing more people to go see those movies, on the flip side of that, that'd be awesome. Like, have the Avengers or Justice Leagues or Star Wars, have those be a little bit more expensive, but then have those in your prime theaters, your best displays, your best sound, and then in your not quite as good theaters, that's when you show your other movies for slightly more affordable tickets. Maybe you can have that
Exactly.
encourage more people to show up. It's just an idea. This thing has just been ongoing. It's hysterical to see how petty it's got.
It is.
We haven't done our 2021 movie predictions. That'll be coming in a few weeks. I would not be surprised at all if HBO Max reverses their decision, at least to some extent, coming off the back of the Dune and the Godzilla vs. Kong backlash that they've gotten from their own partners. So, we'll see. Now, for our last news topic of the day, this one feels a little delayed now because the world has just been talking about it, but it's still fun nonetheless. So, Michael, a few weeks ago, we talked about the Disney investor call, and I was just like, I thought they were working on a Boba Fett series. I thought it was weird that they didn't announce that at the investor call. Not even a week later, watch this end credits for Mandalorian Season 2, And it's confirmed there, of all places, we are getting a Boba Fett series on Disney Plus called The Book of Boba. Is that a New Testament book or an Old Testament book? I'm not as...
That's funny.
I'd imagine it's Old Testament because it's a whole bunch of sand and it gets everywhere. And maybe Boba's rocking some sandals and he's preaching the word, dead or alive, you're coming with me. No, wait, that's RoboCop. My bad. They're robotic people with not a lot of personality. Until Mando fixed Boba Fett for me. This is not a surprise. This is still awesome. Okay, I'll be honest. I was not 100% on board with the Boba Fett series until the stinger at the end of Mando Season 2. Which, spoiler alert, the end of Mando Season 2, he goes back to Jabba's palace, shoots Bib Fortuna, who looks just disgusting, and he just sits on this new throne with Fennec at his side, and I'm like, Boba Fett's not even one of my favorite characters, but I need to see this show because that's pretty awesome. Michael, are you excited for the Book of Boba Fett, and was this surprising at all to you?
It was. I'm glad to have seen that because I actually turned off the credits. I heard about this. I watched the end of The Mandalorian, and then I was like, all right, well, that was cool. And then I heard about this later. It said, end credits of Mandalorian, so I had to come back the next day and watch it, and I went, wow, well done. Well done, everyone. That was great. What a long play that they had for the female character whose name I can't remember.
Fennec?
That was a long play. Yeah, yes, that was a good setup for her. In the worst episode of Mandalorian Season 1, it's nice to see that it eventually paid off. So, the thing is, though, Boba Fett still, I'm a little iffy on because I cannot unsee the most laughable death in Star Wars. Like, the fact that this guy has the cult following, but dies in the most clownish way possible, or, like, seemingly died. I know he's not dead.
That's not what ruined it for me. It's, so the scene where his jetpack goes off and he flies almost into the mouth of the Sarlacc pit, there's a quick cut where Luke is on one of the skiffs and he's holding his lightsaber and he kicks the guy in the face. You know what scene I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Yes,
where Luke's kick misses the guy by 3 feet. Like, that's so distracting going, you made no contact with that whatsoever. It's like when you go back and rewatch Karate Kid, as we've been doing for Cobra Kai. When Daniel does his little crane kick thing, he misses that by like 2 feet. It wasn't even close. But yeah, that's always been so distracting me in Return of the Jedi. That's part of the reason why I'm just like, I know Boba Fett should theoretically die here, but that guy, he faked it. Like the stormtrooper getting hit in the head by the door.
Well, I will not be distracted by that. I guess for me, it's just that Boba Fett himself, like I just never found him intimidating at all, and I thought him is laughable. So if you just take everything in Mandalorian, I think it's great. It's hard for me to care about the character, but the way they have set him up though is really cool, and I am very much anticipating it. I think the best part for me is that I have no expectations for this at all, so I think I'm really going to enjoy it.
I'll have my pitch and then I'll hand it over to you. What I would like to see for this Boba Fett series, I'm really fine with anything, but what I think would be a cool idea is Boba puts a hit out on Han Solo, and it's a whole bunch of bounty hunters coming to finish the Solo job. Now, some people be like, but there's no one paying him. Well, he's now in charge of the entire business. He can kind of put a hit on whoever he wants. He's now in charge of the Hutt clan, it seems like. It just seems like there's some unfinished business there between Han and Boba. So I think that could be a lot of fun. If it was up to you, what would you like to see in the Boba series?
Holy cow, that's an amazing pitch, because you really could bring back Alden Ehrenreich. You could have a lot of fun with that. For me, they've explored some of the themes in the Clone Wars and also in Mandalorian. But what I would absolutely love, and I know it's on the wrong planet, but the abandoned plot line from Star Wars 1313, the canceled video game, and
Oh.
like something more with the fact that please take Boba Fett, the fact that he is now this crime lord leader. Please delve into the black market, the trading, the back deals, the back channels, and have him go on a trip to where he has to go on the underbelly of Coruscant. I just want to see Coruscant again in some sort of cinematic way. So that's my hope, is that please let's deal with the black market. Let's say, like, what did these people do in this world? What does it exactly look like? And again, we've gotten teases from the Clone Wars, from Mandalorian, and from Solo itself, and like the Star Wars story, the actual the theatrical film. And I want more of that. And I think you really can explore maybe some gangs, some underground politics, and I would really, I mean, that's what I'd be craving for a show like that, because with an actor, an older person like Tamara Morrison, you don't really, you can't put him in too many action heavy film or scenes, excuse me. But what you can do is he can be kind of like this sage and working with what's her name to kind of expand the territory, and maybe you can have this syndicate between Coruscant and Tatooine. That's my pitch.
So basically what you're saying is you want Star Wars Mass Effect.
Yes, there you go.
That does not surprise me in the slightest. Yeah, that sounds like the most Michael story pitch I've ever heard.
Well, I hope. Is it good? I mean, does it sound bad?
I'm fine with anything on this show. Boba had one of the most standout episodes in season 2 of Mando, and that's saying something, because I didn't think there was really any bad episodes this season. But DC, take note. You have fun, interesting characters, and people want to see that spun off into other things. Then you make the spin-off for that, not the other way around.
That's right.
Well, 2020 has not been great. But if anything, it's given us time to watch a lot of things, because we had a lot more time on our hands. So today we're going to be talking about the best of 2020, all the things we saw. And as we said at the beginning of the show, because this year is just weird and awful and terrible, and we're glad to be done with it. Anything from 2020 that we saw for the very first time will count as a 2020 movie, because we were limited in our options this year. I do have a pretty definitive, this was to me the best movie of 2020, but I think I'll save that for last, because I know for a fact Michael has seen it too, and we can kind of debate if it counts as a 2020 movie or not. I say it technically does, but we'll burn that bridge when we get there. Let's see. I have here my notes, because I'm weird. I keep track of all the movies that I saw this year, theatrically, but also just any movie period that I hadn't seen before, because usually this time of year I'm doing my end of the year movie montage for you guys to check out to celebrate the year that was in movies. I'm not doing that this year to celebrate the 5 movies that came out in theaters. But there was some good things that came out both theatrically and digitally. I will say, not the best year for DC, as we talked about earlier. While I wasn't the biggest fan of Wonder Woman 1984, I actually didn't mind Birds of Prey, or Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, which is probably still the single stupidest name for a movie ever. I won't say it's the best DC movie, but it was a lot better than I thought it would be. And that's because the trailers did not really properly illustrate what the movie was going to be about. They're just like, it's Harley Quinn in a movie. That's what you guys wanted. We're like, yes, but you still need to put substance there. And there was substance to an extent, but it really should have just been called Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey, because the Birds of Prey barely are in this movie. They're in it for the last 10 minutes. They're cool, but it's definitely a Harley Quinn movie. There are no plans for another one, which is a shame, because there was promise in this movie. It was a flawed, fun time, but it was still fun. And again, it's Ewan McGregor in it as the villain, and anything with Ewan McGregor, except for The Men Who Stare at Goats, I'm all about. And I'm still kind of mad because they definitively made sure that he cannot come back for another movie, and that kind of sucks. But it was fun. So that's kind of my kickoff for this. Michael, what were some of your favorite movies that you saw this year? At all, theatrically, on demand, came out this year, came out years previous.
Well,
go for it.
I'm gonna need your help because when it comes to theatrically, for the movie fans who didn't know this, if they wanna geek out for a second, I actually went and visited Nathan and Heather back in January, which feels like
holy crap,
ago.
you did!
And
that was this year.
No, I came down and
that was
this
year.
Yes, it was, and I went to Disney for the first time. But here's the thing I've been trying to figure out. We went to the City Walk at Universal. What movie did we see? Did we watch Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah, we watched Rise of Skywalker.
Okay. So that was the second time I saw that film, but that's the only movie I've seen in theaters this entire year.
What? Okay, let me do a quick count. Of what I've seen in theaters this year. One. Let me do a quick count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 movies. How many of them were actually good? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, 6 for 6. Every movie I saw in theaters was good to me, at least.
That's pretty good, man. Like,
I'm shooting 100.
That's a really good batting average right there.
Yeah.
So so that's where it comes down to the fact it's not because I didn't want to. It's that our movie theaters weren't open here in Michigan. So they've just reopened here.
4 out of the 6 of mine are before March.
Yeah. Okay, that would make sense. Yeah, I just didn't have the luxury of seeing them, and then the films that came out, like I could have gone and seen Birds of Prey, but I just didn't want to. Some of the films that I did watch though, because other than Rise of Skywalker, everything else that I saw in 2020 was either on demand or rented. So basically all of these films, save for a few, are stuff that I've truly have never seen. So I only went down and actually put down the films that I've never seen. And if I had to pick just some of the highlights of films that I truly loved, I want to give a shout out to 2 documentaries. The Social Dilemma, which is really well put together. That is on Netflix, and it talks about the influence of social media. And then The Last Dance, the ESPN documentary on Michael Jordan. Legitimately one of the best documentaries I've ever seen in my life.
Yep.
Unbelievable. I was late to the party on that. So I'll give a shout out to some documentaries. I just watched it, but A Few Good Men was remarkable. I did not like it before just because of all of the horrible language in it, so I almost didn't finish it. But The Gentleman with Matthew McConaughey was actually, it surprised me. It was a very smart film, but my gosh, I don't think I'll ever watch it again.
Guy Ritchie, for the most part, is normally a good director.
Very much so.
Normally.
So that was a highlight. I didn't have a whole lot of other fantastic live action films, but I'll give a shout out to How to Train Your Dragon 3, which I truly loved, and Ratatouille, and Big Hero 6, which you were the one that recommended the latter two.
You hadn't seen that until this year?
So those were my...
Oh, come on, man.
Nope, I had not. Ratatouille really struck me. That was so much full of heart. I can't believe I hadn't seen it before. And then yes, I think Big Hero 6, that was a winner. My parents and we loved that film. If I had to, you were saving our best of the year for later. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because I have a pretty definitive. This is the best. Not only is my best of the year the best of the year in a very shallow pool, I think it's one of the definitely at least. I wouldn't say it's top 10 favorite movies I've ever seen, but probably one of the top 10 best movies I've ever seen from just a technical and just standpoint.
That's pretty good.
I know for a fact you've seen this movie too, so you won't be surprised when I say what it is.
Oh, okay. All right.
So,
do do you have any before you move on? Do you have any like low lights though before
Oh
we build up
yeah.
to that?
Oh
Like, do you have
yeah.
any?
Like bad
Oh,
movies?
okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like
Oh yeah.
horrible.
Let's see. I've seen 82 movies so far this year that I've never seen before. Let's see some bad ones.
Oh my.
Victor Frankenstein with Daniel Radcliffe and James McAvoy. Oh Jesus, that movie's hot garbage. Oh God, that movie's bad.
I had forgotten that you had seen that film. What is worse, that one or I Frankenstein?
I haven't seen I Frankenstein to know. That's next on the agenda.
You have got you have to watch it. You have to, please.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, Victor Frankenstein was pretty bad. Dracula Untold. It's technically cheating here because I had seen it once while I was at work, but I was like on my phone and like only half paying attention, so I remember none of it. So
Yeah, that doesn't count.
I rewatched it and I was like, yeah, this is pretty bad. Ready to Rumble, starring David Arquette and a whole bunch of WCW wrestlers. It wasn't as bad as everyone makes it out to be, and there was a couple genuinely good chuckles in it, but it's still really stupid early 2000s comedy. Nope. Takes the cake for not only the worst movie I saw this year, but one of the worst movies I've ever seen, period. It is as bad as advertised, if not worse. Halle Berry's Catwoman. Yeah. That was for 5 Good Things. And Heather and I watched it together, and I think we both were physically in pain.
Yeah, I saw that in theaters.
Oh!
My grandmother, when she bless and rest her soul, when she was alive, my grandmother took me to watch that film with her best friend. So it was me, because what year did that come out? Like
2003?
2002?
2002 2003,
2003, yeah. So, I am 9 years old, and I'm with my grandmother and her best friend, and we go and watch Catwoman. And at 9 years old, I knew it was a bad movie.
Man, it hurt. It just physically hurt me. The Antoine Fuqua 2004 King Arthur movie with Ione Gruffafard.
Yes.
It wasn't awful, but it wasn't good. Beautiful soundtrack though. Oh my goodness, that score was amazing. Hugh Jackman's Van Helsing. He sensing a theme here. I love horror, but I'm not the biggest defender of they're always good. The Green Hornet wasn't terrible with Seth Rogen. Kind of forgettable, but it wasn't awful.
But it's bad, though. I mean, it's not a good movie.
It's not bad. It's like the definition of forgettable, though. Okay. This is not the worst movie I've ever seen. Like, Catwoman might very well be the worst movie I've ever seen, but the movie that made me the most mad in 2020 may also go down as one of the movies that made me the most mad ever in a movie, and I saw Batman vs. Superman. 2010's Russell Crowe's Robin Hood. I wanted to punch things after watching that movie. I was so furious of like, you cursed my Robin Hood! Because, little known facts about me, I grew up reading a lot of the classics of Robin Hood, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Treasure Island is one of my favorite stories ever, and just the sheer disrespect to the Robin Hood name. Ridley Scott, I won't forgive you. Yes, The Martian was awesome, but I will never forget what you did to that god-awful Robin Hood movie. It's just Gladiator, except sometimes he shoots a bow instead of a sword. Ugh, that movie was bad. Mortal Kombat, not awful, but still pretty bad. The 2010 Wolfman with Benicio del Toro. I still kind of have a soft spot for that, even though it's not great because the production design is outstanding. Let's see. Secret Window with Johnny Depp was awful, about this writer who's secluded in a cabin and then some murders start happening. He wants to figure out who the murderer is. Spoiler alert, he himself is the murderer. I'm not going to give you... I don't think you should care. This movie's bad and it came out like 17 years ago. Let's see. Nope, I can't say that one because Michael will get mad.
Go ahead, please. This is a discussion.
I saw Top Gun for the first time. I think that movie's bad.
Well,
Because
it's not very exciting.
No, nothing happens in it. It genuinely has no plot. It's just two guys that might actually want to ask each other out on a date, but they're too shy to ask.
Yeah, listen, I'm going to go see Top Gun Maverick
Oh, yeah, same.
because
That looks
it looks like
outstanding.
some of the best cinematography of all time. But
Yes.
you're 100% right. Like, I don't,
And then,
yeah.
lastly,
Um,
for my crap pile, I don't know if, Michael, you remember this movie. It came out, I think, when we were in junior high. A movie called 21. Basically, it was starring Kevin Spacey as
Yes.
a guy that teaches his students how to card count. Oh, my gosh. That movie should have worked, but oh, my goodness, that has to be the single most boring protagonist I've ever seen in a movie. He's so cardboard, cookie-cutter boring. I don't remember the actor's name or anything about him. I remember the rest of the cast except for him.
Yeah, I had seen that in 2019. I watched that on when it was on like Netflix, and I didn't have a bad time with it. It's just kind of weird.
The movie is not that bad. It's just the protagonist. And since you spent so much time with him, it's like literally anybody else. I would say we need more Kevin Spacey, but right now, the world does not need more Kevin Spacey. No.
No, not at all.
Actually, you brought up movies that we saw in theaters. I said I saw some. So going backwards, like the most recent, I talked about Freaky on the show. Saw that recently. Freaky has to be one of the best movies I saw this year. I loved Freaky. Freaky was great. Bill and Ted Face the Music on here. Also, fantastic. And fun story about that, I was at a friend's wedding this year. And the day we had rehearsals, it was in the evening. I may or may not have snuck away with Heather to go see this movie in theaters instead. Not instead of the rehearsal dinner, but like, we went on a special trip just for this wedding, but I put it in our plans. So it's like, okay, we still have to see Bill and Ted sometime while we're on this trip. I know it's a wedding trip for someone else, but we need to see Bill and Ted because it's important. And yes, Bill and Ted is important. My only issue with the Bill and Ted movie that came out this year is when it ends, it just ends. Like, the movie could have used an extra 3 or 5 minutes, because whenever they actually save the day, it just boop. It's like the assistant director just came out and goes, guys, the studio's using the backlot in 5 minutes. Wrap it up. Okay, and cut. Good job, guys. See you for maybe the sequel. Like, it just ends so abruptly. But it was so fun, and I love me some Keanu. But him and Alex Winter do not lose a step. I thoroughly enjoy all the Bill and Ted movies. I've always described them as stoner comedies without the stoner. Like, these guys are just moronic surfer dudes, but they're hearts of gold, and it's the same characters, but they've matured. It's still a really fun movie. Oh, you talked about bad movies. I saw My Spy with Dave Bautista. That movie's bad.
Well, it's it's not my list. I watched that, and I actually had some legitimate laughs. Like, I know what it was. Like, the movie's not going to be good, but I still had a fun time with it.
If you want to watch a good version of that, just go watch The Pacifier. That's way better. The last movie I saw before the pandemic, Ben Affleck's The Way Back, which I was really hoping was going to be better because it's by Warrior director Gavin O'Connor. It was fine. The Invisible Man, as a horror movie, it's great. For me, I was incredibly disappointed just because The Invisible Man is my favorite classic Universal monster, and there's like next to nothing that connects it to the original movie at all. As a horror movie, it's really good. It's a really good narrative. I just fully acknowledge that I'm in a minority because of how little it has to do with the original movie. Already talked about Birds of Prey, and I'll save my best movie for last. Michael, do you have any like pleasant surprises that you saw this year?
Pleasant surprises. I really enjoyed 2004's Pride and Prejudice. I've only read part of the book, and I know that the BBC adapted series is much better, but I had never read the story. I didn't know anything about that Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. I had no idea what it was about, and I actually enjoyed that. I watched Zodiac, and that I
I
enjoy.
love
You know, the movie is way
Zodiac.
too long.
I love
Yeah,
Zodiac so
movie is.
much.
I really did enjoy it. Movie's way too long,
See, it
though.
flies by for
It
me.
really.
Zodiac flies
Um,
by for me. I
as
love
I
it.
watched Snowden.
Oh,
That was with yeah, whatever his face's name. I thought it was actually much better than what I was anticipating it to be. Um, the the other thing again, I'll mention The Last Dance because usually I'm not a big fan of sports documentaries, and that was the biggest surprise all the year. I was addicted. I had to tell myself I'm only going to watch one part a day, and I did not stick to it. Um, I recently just watched the 2006 movie The Nativity Story for Christmas, and Oscar Isaac plays Joseph in that. Surprise! Like nice to see Poe Dameron back in the sand environment, and I actually think it was really well done. The music, you want to talk about a great score? That score to that film is amazing, and then finally, which I'm not going to say, like finally seeing A Few Good Men was very well worth it. I want to hit my lowlights just real quick
oh, please take all the
because
time you want. I
I
love
didn't
talking
see it.
bad movies.
Yeah, well, I didn't see a whole lot of films this year, so with my lowlights Onward, I just thought it was a miss. I did not really care for Onward at all.
Agreed.
Um, I don't know what it was because I think it looked good. I think some of the stuff was funny. It had good voice acting. It just I don't know. I think that it's like the fact that these
It
two boys are trying to connect with their dad. I think it's a beautiful story.
it
It's
just
just
didn't live
there
up
was
to
an
the
X
Pixar
factor.
standard. Just didn't live up to the
Yeah,
Pixar standard.
yeah. Um, I watched a movie. I guess it's in that classification of John Malkovich just trying to earn money. Ava. It was a spy thriller with Jessica Chastain and John Malkovich, and it was awful. Like it was horrendous from beginning, middle to end, and it had who was the Irish guy who was in The Gentleman, who was in the Fantastic Beasts, Irish Colin Farrell. Had Colin
Oh,
Farrell in it too.
oh,
It's
I
like
like
you have
Colin
like a lot of
Farrell.
good actors. Yeah, and it just was just a terrible film.
Huh.
So that was a big miss. But the biggest ones are the ones I've watched recently. Gemini Man
Oh.
was horrible,
Okay, but in
and
Gemini Man's defense, how good did it look?
it looked phenomenal.
Yeah,
Like it
Gemini
was
Man.
unbelievable.
For those that
It
don't
just
know, Gemini Man is basically a really, really fancy tech demo for your TV. Like it looks and sounds great, but that's about all we can say about Gemini Man.
yeah. And I watched it in Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos at a 4K HDR, 60 frames per second, and it was really cool to watch it. It was really nice to see Will Smith cry the entire movie. He just cried, like that's all that he did.
Okay,
My gosh, it was a dumpster fire.
okay,
Um,
but Gemini Man has one of my
and
favorite lines in it of when the clone figures out he's a clone. He's like, "You made a person out of another person," and I'm like, "Will? That's kind of how babies are more born. You know that, right? Like, you kind of have to have a
yeah,
person to make another person. Like it, they were just like this big shocking moment. I'm going, yes, that's how it's that's how this works, dude. It's just bad. I'm with you.
yeah. And then I'm gonna say the film that I saw with you, and I might tick off a lot of people, but Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker is on there for one of the worst films I saw all year. Um,
Wow.
just I have no desire to ever watch that movie again.
It it's a
And
mess,
I
but I
don't
could
say
still
that
have fun
lightly
with it.
because
I still like it more than
yeah,
Last Jedi.
I have more fun. Yeah, I have more fun with the prequels, honestly, because it's just a culmination of everything that was wrong with the Disney era Star Wars films
Up
under
until that
Kathleen
point.
Kennedy, and it just yeah, it's awful. But the worst film for me, worst film hands down of the year, was Mile 22 with Mark Wahlberg and
Oh.
Ronda Rousey
Ugh.
and the other I can't think of the other actress like what she was in. She was in The Walking Dead. That movie is probably one of the worst scripts I have ever seen put to film. The character, like I think Mark Wahlberg's character was there to like they try, like that's the best part, is that the movie tries to get you to care. It's not like it just ignores it and is self-aware. They try to get you to have empathy for Mark Wahlberg's main character, and it's it is so laughable, and the script is a joke. It seems like it was written by a 6-year-old. And then the massive plot twist that the movie has so much arrogance that it thinks it's going to make enough money to actually have a sequel. They tease a sequel, which is hilarious to me. Worst film of the year. I'd rather watch Gemini Man again, if
Oof.
for whatever it's worth, the visuals. So yeah, do not see Mile 22.
Good to know. I actually this year more than anything, being stuck inside, I discovered quite a bit of good stuff. That has been out for a while, but I just, whether I was late to the party or discovered it firsthand. One of my favorite things that I discovered this year is a horror trilogy called the Hell House trilogy. Normally, I hate found footage, but this is found footage that's good and it makes sense. So basically, it's this group of friends that is at least the first one is a group of friends that buy this house in a town that supposedly it's haunted, but they're going to open it up as a haunted house. So the reason why it's found footage, but the reason why it's found footage is they're setting up security cameras and everything else for insurance reasons. So it logically makes sense. But good God, there's some good scares there. Like there's a scene where they go to the basement and they find clowns already there. Clown mannequins. That's not scary whatsoever. But they turn the camera and then they turn back and the clowns are all facing towards them now, but it's all in camera. Like it's clearly somebody in the suit. And I jumped so high the first time. The other two aren't nearly as good. Especially there's a couple times where they have visual effects where clearly they don't have the budget for visual effects. But they were so surprisingly good, and I have revisited them a few times because I've enjoyed them so much. I was like, wow, a completely new, fresh, original horror trilogy that, like The Purge, kind of builds upon its own lore. Like, there's actually interesting narrative there besides the story that with each passing movie builds and builds upon its previous movie to the point that of like, oh, you're actually establishing your own rules and lore, and I really appreciate that, and it actually had internal continuity. It was really, really good. Another quasi-horror movie called Dead Detectives. It's one of the only ones that I'd probably recommend to you, Michael. It's actually pretty good. So basically, picture a group of friends, kind of like Ghost Hunters International. They're totally fake. They're phonies. They pretend to haunt people for TV, except they actually get called to a genuinely haunted house, and hilarity ensues. This is not a spoiler. It happens about a third of the way through the movie. One of their friends is killed by the ghost in the house, and so they are now a group of friends with a ghost on their team that's still trying to figure out how to get this actual ghost out of this haunted house. It sounds really, really dumb, but it feels a lot like a Psych episode, and it really, really worked for me. I had a lot of fun with it. Really liked a movie called Haunt. That actually kept me up at night. That's very rare to do. The best comic book movie I've seen all year. Some people discount it because it's an animated movie. But Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. Basically, everything that can go wrong does go wrong. Darkseid, all the Justice League is like, we've had it. We're going to go to Darkseid once and for all and beat him at his own game on his own planet. Except when they're hatching their plan and everything, Darkseid is hacked into Cyborg and knows the attack's coming. So he just wrecks their day. But that's not a spoiler because that actually happens in the first 5 minutes of the movie. And then the next hour or so is us living in this completely destroyed, awful world because there's no heroes left. And then the last half an hour is regrouping everybody to go, we've lost everything. We've got one last chance to stop Darkseid once and for all. And it's actually really, really epic, and I really, really enjoyed it. Michael, have you ever heard of a movie called Ed Wood?
I have not. No, sir.
When I say Tim Burton, what do you think of?
13, or what was it, 9? I think of really a really specific animation style that I'm not interested in.
Well, I thought that same thing too until I saw Ed Wood. I actually watched two movies that I'll talk about in here with Tim Burton. Ed Wood probably might be my new favorite Tim Burton movie. So it's basically about a real life director named Ed Wood who's known for making some of the worst movies of all time, like B movies, just terrible. But he keeps making them because he just loves making movies no matter what people tell him. And it's kind of like the Disaster Artist before the Disaster Artist ever existed. But I appreciate it as a Universal Monster fan because in one of Ed Wood's real life movies that he made, he cast Bela Lugosi, who was Dracula, who when Ed Wood cast him was more or less really, really hard on his luck. So it's an inspiring, keep pursuing your dreams, even if everyone tells you you're really, really bad at it. But it's also a really, really loving homage to the Universal Monsters and Bela Lugosi of, sometimes your heroes get old and they're not who you think they are. Like, that shows Bela Lugosi with his drug issues, being really hard pressed for money, being down on his luck. But they get you to care about him again. I think it was an Academy Award winning performance by that actor. It was really, really good. But it almost broke me, and I think it did a little bit of, spoiler alert, because Bela Lugosi is dead in real life, and it has been for a while. Bela Lugosi dies in the movie, and at his funeral, the composer, I think it was Danny Elfman, played the classic Universal Monster music as a nice little touching tribute to Bela Lugosi of do 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 do, which I was like, oh, that's a nice touch. It's really hard to describe how good Ed Wood is. It's not what you would expect from a Tim Burton movie at all. I think you would actually really like it, Michael. And the other one that I had never actually seen, I've seen a lot of people rave about it, but I was like, I'm going to give it a try, is Johnny Depp and Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow. I loved every minute of it so much. It just oozes Halloween atmosphere. Like, it feels like Tim Burton, but if Tim Burton did a classic Universal Monster movie, like, there's fog everywhere, no matter what. The old Gothic architecture, having Christopher Lee in there for a quick cameo with a nice little Dracula Easter egg in there. Even Johnny Depp, who I'm kind of on the fence about as an actor, I really liked him as Ichabod, actually. I just really, really enjoyed Sleepy Hollow. It was something fresh. It was something different. I'm just a sucker for Universal Monsters, and this felt very much like a classic Universal Monster movie, to the point of when it was done, I was like, I think it's a huge missed opportunity that we never got Tim Burton to do some form of a classic Universal Monster movie, because between this and Ed Wood, he's clearly a big fan of them, and they impacted him greatly as a child. The second Psych movie, Lassie's Home, I am a Psych diehard to the very end. Michael, you know that better than anybody, because I remember the finale was in college, and I demanded that I have the TV in not so pleasant ways. So sorry about that. Again, Bill and Ted Face the Music. Class Action Park, a documentary on HBO Max about the sketchiest theme park in the world, is pretty great. I already talked about Sleepy Hollow, which just, I think, leads me to my best movie of the year. I think that's my only one left. You got any other movies you want to talk about before we get into what I think? And what I'm saving it for last because I feel like, Michael, you'll probably be in the same camp on me with this one. Any other movies you want to talk about?
Oh, well, yeah, I'll just give a brief mention to I'll say Chris Hemsworth's film Extraction on Netflix was better than anything I thought it was going to be. I just thought that some of the action was actually really well shot in that. Not saying it was the best film by any means, but I will give that some props. I will say I really did enjoy. Like I mentioned earlier, Ratatouille. I think that was probably the highlight animated film I saw all year. And then I will mention again A Few Good Men. I haven't mentioned the film I enjoyed the most, but A Few Good Men is solidly in the number 2 spot. And again, I really have yet to see anything that I don't like from Aaron Sorkin as far as his writing and it also it was. I'm a little biased here because I was able to see it with my dad, and my dad has quoted this movie his entire life, and to finally sit down with him and watch it just added more to it. So, yeah, thank you for asking there, and I can't wait. Well, stop teasing me. I'm I think the fact that we agree on something, this is going to be huge.
Also, before I get into that, correct me if I'm wrong. Did also Aaron Sorkin write Moneyball too?
Yes, he did.
Okay, that makes
Yes, he
sense
did.
because Moneyball is one of my favorite baseball movies of all time. It's so well written. But no, um, it's no secret that Michael and I, like, we agree on movies from time to time, but it's very rare that we'll ever completely agree. I think the reason why I've held off, because I know for a fact Michael will agree with me on this. So this movie technically got a limited release in December of 2019, but it got a wide release in January of 2020. That's why I'm counting it for this. It had that so that it could be nominated for Academy Awards and whatnot. And boy, did this movie ever, and I don't think it got nearly enough. It's not one of my favorite movies I've ever seen, but I still think it's one of the best movies I've ever seen. Sam Mendes's 1917.
Oh, okay. Yes. All right. That I saw it in 2019, so I totally forgot. Like I didn't put it on my 2020 list. Unbelievable. That's all I'll say. Unbelievable film.
And nothing else. Just on. It is hard to describe.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking about it now. Like it's a technical achievement. The film looks amazing. Like it doesn't. It's not just that. It's not like it's a one thrill thing. It's not like, hey, yeah, that's that one movie that did that one thing. Like, no, it's a fantastic film. And oh, by the way, they try to make it look like it's one seamless, continuous story, and they do it so incredibly well. From the sound design to the production design to the actual screenplay, and then the acting. The acting, oh my goodness, what an amazing film. Probably the best film of 2019, in my opinion, or at least in the top three. So thank you for mentioning that and putting it in 2020. That eluded me. We agree wholeheartedly on this. Like that movie, like it left my jaw open.
Yeah, it got a mainstream release in January because I remember trying to track it down in December, but it was only showing in a few theaters at the time in December. But oh my goodness, I've seen plenty of horror movies. No horror movie has done to me what 1917 did in the theater. I was white knuckling that at quite a few points. Like, I almost leapt out of my seat just, heck yeah, go get him, when he climbs on the ridge and just sprints across the battlefield. Thomas Newman's outstanding score of 1600 Men, the cinematography of that scene, just everything about that movie was just brilliant. I loved 1917 so much. It is a masterclass in all aspects of filming, acting, CGI, believe it or not. There's outstanding CGI in 1917. So good that you don't even realize it's CGI. Cinematography goes without saying. It's some of the best cinematography in any movie I've ever seen. It's just so good. It's stuck with me so much. It's also just such a simple story, but it's so impactful. But he still feels some stuff. And I remember talking to you about this. Of a character dies in one of the scenes, but what's crazy to me is it's all in camera, and you literally see the color drain from their face, and I'm just watching it the whole time going, how did they do that? Or crash a plane.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how'd you crash a plane safely? There's so many times that I'm like, just how? It's 1917 was just wow. That's all I can really say to describe it. And no movie even came close to it in 2020 for me. So yeah, it came out mainstream for everybody in 2020. So that's why it's my 2020 movie of the year.
Oh, man, can I not agree with you more? Looking back, I mean, I saw it with my father because I have to see those type of things with my dad, and what an amazing experience, and you captivated exactly what what is great about film sometimes as a movie fan like you are and I am, but you're more experienced, you're closer to it, especially with the production side. To have you go, oh my goodness, how did they do that? Like that is still like the wonder. That's why we go to films. And especially when it's not just in films that are okay, but films that have captivated every single emotion. Films that beg for your attention and then keep it the entire length of its duration, and that show you the aspects and the power of filmmaking, and that make that inner 6-year-old still come out. Like that is why we go to see films, and that it captivated every single emotion, and it checked every single box. So couldn't agree with you more, man. That is an amazing pick. I couldn't agree with you more on 1917. That is, I think, the best pick, and that's truly in a summary of like why we go to films, the absolute pinnacle of films that have come out, I think, in the last year. Couldn't agree with you more. Thank you for bringing that up. I'll just say briefly that my best film of the year by far, I'll say that because the upper echelon was A Few Good Men, and it was this. It was the first theatrical Jack Ryan film. It's one I saw recently here. Again, a film that my dad has quoted his entire life, and that was The Hunt for Red October. That just kept my attention from beginning to the end. It had some great humor, some really good tension, like, especially for early 90s. Like the effects actually weren't terrible, and it's just an interesting plot. And listen, any sort of film where I can see Sean Connery in it, I'm going to take it. And finally being able to watch it with my dad after seeing and hearing these references my entire life. The highlight of 2020 for me, theatrically, The Hunt for Red October. Very glad I had an opportunity to say that. And the only reason why it's not 1917, pals, because I actually saw that in 2019. So what a great year in a way for us to, you said you saw 82 films. Like, that's amazing to be able to go back.
That's a slow year. That's a slow year. The year before, this is a slow year. The year before I did 122. So.
Oh my, yes. Well, the fact that you're able to see films you hadn't seen before, and the same thing for me, I think is a good thing. That's a great takeaway. So here's to 2021, and if I'm not mistaken, we are gonna talk about some films in 2021 coming up, I believe, right?
Yes, that's the plan. Next week we'll be doing our top 10 most anticipated movies of 2021, but barring any weird thing happening, we'll be like, these are our top 10 most anticipated movies of 2021, with the huge caveat that they stick to their release dates, because I'm going to have some that were on my 2020 movie most anticipated list that still haven't come out yet. So yeah, we'll be talking about, barring any unforeseen circumstances, the movies that we're most excited for in 2021, and then maybe the week after that, we'll talk about our bold predictions. Yes, there might be some crossover from 2020 predictions, but you can't hold that against us. It's been a weird year. I'm also curious to see what Michael has prediction-wise for the year ahead when it comes to movies. What were your favorite movies that you saw this year? Let us know in the comments below. We always like hearing from you guys. And as always, if you like what you hear and you want to hear more, subscribe to us on whatever audio platform you're listening to us on, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube. And if you haven't already, subscribe to us on YouTube at Uncharted Media. And as always, stay sharp, movie guys and gals.